across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good evening to you. It is Petrie here with you through until 1 o'clock. And just before we get into the programme proper, I couldn't help but notice that on a day when Suella Braverman is talking about removing the Equalities Act, that of course we lost one of the greatest civil rights campaigners of our time. Of mankind, really, and that is Jesse Jackson, of course, who died at the age of 84. An incredible man who was with Martin Luther King when he died, when he was shot by James Earl Ray, and he was talking to him. He was in a car park talking up to Martin Luther King when he was shot, and rather than that destroy him, he went on to become an incredible voice in the civil rights movement. So that juxtaposition today really hit me, that this great voice, this man who stood for all, not just black people, but stood for everybody's right to be equal, is the same day that Suella Braverman announces that Reform is going to get rid of the Equal Rights Act. I just thought that that was an interesting point to make. But I also want to say that we will be addressing the life of Jesse Jackson later on in the programme during the papers, because he's on the front page, as he absolutely rightly should be, of pretty much every single newspaper. So we'll be talking more about the incredible Reverend Jesse Jackson's life coming up at 11 o'clock. For the rest of the programme, though, what are the predictors of crime? Now, I want to talk to you about this at midnight, because there's an action plan by this government to create a machine that will predict the criminals of the future, children. Now, look, we've all seen those kids in the playground, right? And you look at them, you go, oh, he's a right little scrote, that one, and he's going to be a crook. But that doesn't mean you get the police involved. This is something incredibly sinister. It is reminiscent of the Minority Report. And this is on its way. It's been kept very quiet. It's part of a larger bill talking about how AI is going to help the justice system. It's going to, prevent crimes, help with the admin, blah, blah, blah. But buried in it is this machine that they want to use as a predictor of future criminals. And we know how biased these people are. So I'm just wondering how many kids of single mothers are going to be listed in there to watch. How many black kids, how many poor kids, how many Muslim kids. You can see it, can't you? The predictors will be a trope, because, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're looking at the Epstein list at the moment, and they're all billionaires and millionaires committing some of the most heinous crimes that this world has ever seen. So how is it possible to predict a criminal of the future? So that's what I want to talk to you about. I want to talk to you about what kind of background did you come from? Did you turn to crime? I believe that any one of us at any point in our lives could turn to crime if we absolutely needed to, if we were in a dire situation. So I'm not sure there is a predictor of criminals. I see this as being an incredibly sinister move. I think it is going to be incredibly biased, and they're going to pick out these kids according to an algorithm and have the police involved. But they've not committed a crime, right? But we're going to have all sorts of agencies, professionals involved, police, schools, trying to, it just stigmatises these kids. I just don't understand where this is going. I don't like where this is going. I think I fully understand where it's going. I'll correct myself there, but I don't like where it's going. So that's what I'm going to be talking about at midnight. So I want to hear your stories. Were you from a single parent family? Was that a predictor of criminology? I mean, I brought my son up on my own. He's not a criminal. He's hardworking, member of society, pays his tax, does all those things. Really good man. So would he have been picked out because he had a single parent? Probably not, because he's white. I don't know. This is the thing. Anyway, that's what I want to talk to you about. So did you come from a single parent family? Did you come from poverty? Would that have been a predictor of crime? What would be a predictor of crime, do you think? And do you believe, like I do, that anybody would be the most likely to commit a crime? Do you think we would all be capable of committing a crime if we needed to? I do. I really do. I mean, having been to places like Bosnia where you see the breakdown of society and thoroughly decent, normal folk turning to criminality, sometimes as far as murder, because they could get away with it. So just really, really interesting to me. This is one of those things that I'm fascinated about. So I'd love to hear from you about this. Do give me a call, 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And you can text the word talk and your message to 87222. So do get in touch with me about that. What do you see as a predictor of crime? Cody, Darla will be here in the studio to go through the newspapers for tomorrow. Adam French is here. This is a really interesting story as well. It was on the front pages yesterday. Banking giants are looking into ways to create an alternative payment system should the US decide to turn off payments like Visa and MasterCard. So if you've got a Visa or a MasterCard, this is really 95% of all payments in this country are made via Visa or MasterCard. So it's if America under Trump decided to switch it off, we'd be stuffed. We'd be absolutely stuffed. So there's concerns about that. Banks are getting together for that. And Scott Lucas will be joining us as well to talk about the latest in defence as we look at the defence spend rising, and US and Iran meeting in Geneva today, and they've apparently come up with some kind of beginnings of a plan. But first, let's turn our attention to this. As part of this AI action plan, artificial intelligence could be used to predict criminals of the future by identifying children who could turn to crime as they grow up. The new programme, launched by the Ministry of Justice last week, is set to develop a system that will work with schools, health staff, police and other professionals to identify those most likely to fall into wrongdoings and target them with support and intervention. But what is going to feed this algorithm? What are they going to put into it? And is it going to be biased? Is it going to be fair? Let's talk first of all to Emma Cunningham, who's a senior lecturer in criminology at the University of East London. Emma, good to talk to you again. Is it possible to accurately predict who will turn to crime?
Well, I think, from what we've seen, it's quite a cautionary tale, because I think the problem with it, or the potential problem, is that it's going to criminalise children. How do we know if someone who's deprived or from a one-parent family is going to commit criminality? And if all these services are involved, is that going to dissuade people from engaging with those services and reporting and having those crimes recorded?
I mean, they're going to be looking at kids in primary school, very young children as well. This is not the first time something like this has been mooted. I remember probably a decade ago there was another scheme they were going to come up with to identify potential criminals of the future. But what is the best predictor? Is there a predictor? What is the best predictor of somebody becoming a criminal? Is it written in the stars? Where does it come from?
No, and I think it's worrying that we are just concentrating efforts on these children who are already facing massive challenges. So whether that's socioeconomics and they're from poorer backgrounds, or whether it's their ethnicity, or whether they're neurodiverse, why are we concentrating on children who are already challenged rather than concentrating on perpetrators of crime? And that's my concern. Is this really going to help cut crime? I mean, I think Police Scotland did a good job when they took a holistic approach in trying to stop knife crime, for instance, but they had a lot of support there in place in those services. I'm not hearing about that kind of support in this case.
I mean, there will be, I mean, people like yourself who work in criminology. Are there patterns, though? I mean, could this work in a way, you know, if it's children of parents who spent time in prison, for example, are they more or less likely to turn to criminality themselves? If it's, you know, are poor people more likely to turn to criminality? Is there a pattern that emerges?
I don't think so. I think we could say the same about different offenders in different socioeconomic groups. So you can see the potential for white collar and corporate crime, for instance, and that doesn't seem to be coming under the spotlight in the same way. So my concern would be around criminalising and labelling children before they're actually criminalised, before they're engaging in anything that's offensive.
It might be that they look at I mean, I don't know who's going to be educating this machine, and that is always a concern, because we've already spotted in AI there's a lot of bias. But if it could say, I mean, I don't know, I suppose it depends on those predictors, doesn't it? It depends on if you have a clear image of who is most likely to turn to crime. I mean, I personally believe we're all capable of turning to crime if the circumstances in our lives changed. And as you pointed out, white collar criminals. I talked about the Epstein list. All of the blokes on there seem to be majority white and rich and privileged. So it is difficult to predict. But to say it were to be looking at violence, looking at knife crime, you could look at a classroom of kids and see perhaps vulnerable children living on an estate, for example, who may be targeted by gangs. Is that sort of intervention welcome, if you like, even if it is by the police?
I think we've got to be really careful, because we see with things like facial recognition interventions, and we see with stop and search that, you know, there are biases within that, and that young black men are stopped more than anyone else. So what's to say that that won't happen with these programs? And that's a real concern. That and labelling children as potential criminals.
But some people listening would say, well, the reason that young black men are stopped more often than others is because young black men are discovered to be carrying more knives. And certainly when you hear of another death in a city, you see this young black face. So a lot of people go, yeah, but that's just sensible.
But the impact of those stops, and where there's no further action in a huge number of those stops, is massive. And so those young men then grow up and go on to not trust the police, to not engage with any of those services.
Yeah.
And I think that's a fear that we've got with these young children. If there's nothing in place, that having this programme could potentially cause more problems than it will help. I can see why it would be something that the police would be interested in, because of resources, finances, policing, you know, everyday crimes. If that makes it easier for them, I can see why they would go towards a program of this nature. But I do think we've got to remember that these are young people.
These are kids, little kids. Emma, good to talk to you again. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Emma Cunningham there, Senior Lecturer in Criminology at the University of East London. Well, joining me now is Jennifer Ogole, OBE, CEO of Bang Edutainment, a youth-focused charity working on early intervention of young people at risk of social exclusion. Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me. An interesting conversation there, looking at the predictors of criminality. Are you concerned that an algorithm like this will be biased, that it will unfairly target a certain demographic of young children?
I think that data in and of itself is harmless. I would question the reasons why, and I would even question the validity of that data. Like Emma rightly said, we may be able to predict certain types of crime, but what about other types of crime? And also, if you think about the level of investment in something like this, why not put that into investing in those young people and early intervention and diverting their pathways? All communities, regardless of whatever statistics around poverty, etc., have challenges, and those challenges may lead to young people going off the path and committing crime. Whatever that crime is, it could be, really well-off middle class or, wealthy people that will sell drugs at university. It may be young people from estates that will get engaged with gangs and get involved in county lines.
But do you think, though, that people inputting the information, do you believe they're going to input the sort of, the posh boys at private school who get approached to push drugs? Do you think that they will be looking at children like that? Or do you think they will be looking at poverty as a predictor of crime, of skin colour as a predictor of crime? Does that concern you?
AI is not going to do anything different than we're already doing, Petrie. No. AI is just going to be another way to do what we're already doing. So the real question is, what is the appetite for real effective change here? What are we using it for? Because if you use AI, I use AI, what do we use it for? We use it to make the things we already do better. We use it to have an easier life, doing exactly what we're doing. We don't use it to change. So the real question is, what's the appetite for change? And what will it take? We know we have issues with youth crime and just crime in general in our country. What is it we're prepared to do to change that? And so if we have any money and resources to invest, why are we not investing in young people so that their outcomes are different and their pathways are different?
I mean, it is...
Because we know these things, Petrie.
I mean, that's the thing. I've been talking about this for years, that in areas where there is a substantive youth club and support in there in terms of mental health support, homework support, mentors, sports and things like that, there is almost zero youth crime. It is not rocket science. It really isn't. So why is it so difficult to turn that page, to make that happen, when all of the evidence supports what I've just said?
Exactly. Why have we seen a decline in investment in youth services and youth provision over the years and a rise in youth crime, and yet the action is around more data, more information, and not investment in young people? And I dare say, Petrie, that young people, given where we are with digital and AI and the world as it is, they are our golden ticket. And if we do not invest in them, it's everyone's loss.
And how do we're talking here potentially primary school children being selected, right, as being potentially, according to some algorithm, potential criminals of the future, in which case, police and other professionals get involved before any criminality, of course. What effect will that have on a young person to be identified as a potential criminal? Is that going to whip them into shape, or have the opposite?
Down the lack of confidence and the lack of self-esteem that they already have. I grew up on an estate. I came to this country as a refugee and asylum seeker. I grew up on the Stonebridge estate in West London, and I had every one of those markers to become, any one of those predictions. And what did it really take to change that around? And I grew up knowing that these stereotypes were things that I had to live with. Yeah. And it took the investment of individuals, who took the time to see me as something different and invest in me. And that's what we need to call for. There's so many, for example, we've always had, Petrie, this thing around young, single parents and mothers and households without fathers. I brought up a son, who's 30 years old and now has started working with young people. And he could have believed that. Or we could just understand that there is a risk. And so if we do have resources, we have the data. We've had the data for decades.
Yeah, again, the single mother trope is, I always say this as well, that after the Second World War, there were a hell of a lot of single mothers, right? And yet a whole generation of fine young men were brought up through that. And we get vilified for everything. I brought up a boy on my own. He's an amazing member of society. Your boy is as well. I know he's now working at the charity. I mean, extraordinary, but they may have been picked out in this algorithm, right? Yeah. Your son more than mine, to be fair.
Right. So as single parents, what we then have to do is build them to fight against a stigma, to challenge a stigma, which isn't necessary. If the investment is saying, look, we know that there are communities and there are young people who may be facing challenges because they're brought up by single mothers, because they lack resources, they lack access, they lack social networks, then build the social networks. That we already know these things. Yeah. We don't need more data. We need intervention. We need positive intervention.
Yes, supportive intervention.
Yes.
I mean, I've just got a message here saying, where are the dads? Why are the dads not around? There's a lot of questions that come up about that. But and then the mother gets the blame for the child. But
dads walk away. Dads die. Dads get mental illness, a variety of reasons. That's not...
People get divorced, wanting to...
Whatever it is that life throws, I think the thing we need to be teaching our children and we need to be modeling is resilience and strength. And that comes from building communities and building young people to understand that they have a role to play in the communities, no matter what challenges they have. And in fact, the challenges that they do have prepare them to lead. Those are not disabilities. Those are not problems. Those are big things, really, if you think about it. So it's time for us, I think, to change. And I think with AI and all of this technology, we cannot allow that to perpetuate the challenges and the issues that we have. We must look at these as opportunities to address, to give us information so that we can do better.
Yeah, so that we can actually be supportive. Jennifer, it's fascinating talking to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Jennifer Ogole there, OBE, CEO of Bang Edutainment. So the crime is a result of the state becoming dad and teaching young boys, state paying for the kids instead of the dads. That's Mark from Newcastle. But I do take you back to after the Second World War, when there were 1 million plus dads missing, right? And sons and men. So it's not always that. It's not always that. But sometimes, I guess. Anyway, thank you, Mark. I'm going to take a quick break, but I'll be back in a moment.
Across the UK. On DAB+. On YouTube. On your mobile. And on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a good evening to you. This is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And of course at midnight it's your chance to talk back. So I want to hear from you about this new machine that the Ministry of Justice will deploy that will identify at-risk children for early intervention and help them from falling into a life of crime. So it could be used to predict the criminals of the future. The government plans to identify children who need targeted interventions to stop them falling into a life of crime. The programme, launched by the Ministry of Justice last week, yeah, that's how quiet they've kept it, will aim to develop a system that can alert schools, health staff, police and other professionals to individuals most likely to be drawn into crime. Is it just me, or is this particularly sinister? This is the Minority Report, roughly, isn't it? That great movie with Tom Cruise in it. That predictor of criminality. But is there a predictor of criminality? Does poverty, which I bet you poverty will be in the algorithm, is poverty a predictor of criminality? Is being a single parent, having a single parent, a predictor of criminality? Is being black a predictor of criminality? Is being brown a predictor of criminality? I mean, you talk to criminologists and they'll say it's very difficult because there are lots of different types of crime and lots of different types of people that get involved in lots of different types of crime for lots of different reasons, right? So is there a predictor of crime and criminality? And when you were a kid, were you brought up by a single parent? Were you brought up by two parents, but one of them had been to prison? What? Because I mean, my parents got, my mum got divorced, I think two or three times. But we were white and sort of middle class, so I suppose we wouldn't be predictors of crime, right? We just wouldn't have been there. And that's what concerns me, is criminalising children, is treating them like future criminals, when perhaps, as Jennifer was saying, they just need a bit of support. And as I was saying, with youth clubs, if there's a youth club, a substantive youth club in the area with all sorts of support in there, and there are a few of them, the youth crime is practically zero in those areas. It is not rocket science. It really, really isn't. Kids get a place to go and do their homework, for example. If they're living in a small flat and there's 5 kids or 4 kids, they've got nowhere to do their homework properly, they fall behind on work at school, etc., etc., etc. That, of course, can lead to a life of crime. If you're falling behind at school, your lack of education, all of those things. But if you just give them somewhere to go and do their homework, that can prevent that from happening. So rather than predicting criminals, why don't we stop them from happening in the first place by giving them the support, the proper support that they need? Anyway, look, this is a particular interest to me. I'd love to hear from you. If you came from a poorer background or a single parent, what stopped you from going into a life of crime? Do you believe, as I do, that any one of us could turn to criminality if the world suddenly changed? We would, all of us, turn to criminality within a heartbeat. So how do you predict that? Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good evening. This is Talk and it's Petrie here with you until 1 o'clock. And just a reminder that coming up at midnight is Cody Darla. He'll be here to go through the front pages of the newspapers for you. But for now, let's turn our attention to security and defence, because there's been quite a bit going on recently. Iran and the United States, it appears, have reached an understanding on guiding principles after fresh talks on Tehran's nuclear capabilities in Geneva. This is according to Iran's foreign minister. It was constructive, but there's been no decisions made. It is all just now that they've agreed to continue talking, basically. At the same time, there are supposed to be peace talks going on between Russia and Ukraine, as Russia continues to bombard Ukraine with 30 drones, and 8 missiles. So not exactly a peaceful gesture. And then, of course, there's our defence spending, which is set to increase to 3% by the end of this political term, which is 2029. And it's going to cost us an extra 17 billion a year of GDP. We spend about 66 billion at the moment. But it is deemed necessary to do that. So joining me to discuss these issues is Scott Lucas, Professor of International Politics and founder and editor of EA World View. Good to talk to you again, Scott. Thank you so much for joining me. Let's have a look first of all at US and Iran, as the US sends yet another massive ship into the Straits, and in fact Iran has been doing live firing exercises as well. They've begun talks. Nothing has been decided, nothing has been agreed. Donald Trump is suggesting that he wants them to not enrich uranium at all ever again. Iran is saying that is not going to happen.
Yeah, so Petrie, I think you introduced it very well in saying where we are is that there are talks about talks. And so when the Iranian foreign minister today said we made good progress on a path forward, what he was saying in effect is, look, we've defined an agenda for the further talks. And he didn't say anything about that agenda, but I think if we want to make sense of this, we should establish where the key points are, where meaningful talks could happen. The first is that Iran's going to want sanctions, and the first Trump administration put in comprehensive sanctions that contributed to Iran's economic decline in 2018. They'll want those sanctions lifted. Secondly, Iran will want some level of nuclear enrichment, because you can enrich uranium for civilian purposes, and Iran says, well, we should be able to have that. Now, as you noted earlier, the public Trump administration position has been zero enrichment. Third, Iran wants to make clear that the talks are only about its nuclear program. For example, that talking about their ballistic missiles are off limits. If Iran gets that and some form of limited enrichment, what it's holding out is the idea of verification, and that is code for the fact they could restore cooperation with the inspectors of the International Atomic Energy Agency. That those inspections have effectively been eroded and limited by the Iranians for about the past 6 years. That's where we are. But both sides are playing a little bit of, oh, we'll talk, and then they're acting tough at the same time. From the Iranian standpoint, the foreign minister says, all right, we've made some progress. But the supreme leader said today, we're dealing with a morally corrupt nation, and we have to have a nuclear program. The U.S. sends out its real estate developer, Steve Witkoff, and Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. But then they continue to send out, as you mentioned, a second aircraft carrier, the Gerald Ford, whose last position was off the coast of Venezuela. And we know what happened next in that story.
It is. I keep wondering, though, Scott, when with Donald Trump, he likes to posture. This is what this is, threatening, putting this military force just outside Iran. But when he's talking about the potential of attacking Iran, I don't know what he's going to attack. I mean, I called it last time when he was threatening when the riots were going on at the uprising, and I said he's definitely not going to bomb it because he's got nothing to bomb. I mean, the forces are in the towns deliberately. They're in structured areas where civilians live. He's already apparently bombed their nuclear sites, although now he's using a slightly different language for that. So I don't know what the posturing is about.
Well, I think that's one of the keys here, Petrie, is that if you're talking about military operations, there's no defined plan here. Look, we were here last June. The Israelis bombed Iran for 12 days. They fired missiles at military sites. They fired missiles alongside the Americans at nuclear sites. They fired at built-up civilian areas, trying to kill Iran's political leadership. They inflicted a lot of damage on Iran, but they didn't break the regime. And the problem here is that, if Trump thinks, oh, if I bomb the Iranians, it means that the regime will fall, the protesters will now come to power. In fact, the opposite is likely to happen. What we saw last June is that once Israel attacked, the regime could go, hey, look, everybody, America's against us and Israel's against us. You have to stand behind us. And that completely blocked the way forward for the protest at that point. Now, they have been brutally repressed in the last few weeks. We're talking thousands, tens of thousands who have been killed. But we have to be, we can't muddle these two issues, which is that Iranians wanting to change their regime and wanting reforms and justice are in any way going to be assisted by American military pressure.
Yeah.
In fact, the opposite likely to occur. In Venezuela, the Americans got lucky, in a sense, in that they had an option, which was that the Venezuelan regime sold out the president. They effectively said, okay, you can come kidnap Maduro, you let the rest of us stay in power.
Yeah.
I don't think the Iranian regime is going to say, you can have the supreme leader who's 86 years old, and the rest of us are going to be quite happy with that.
Well, anyway, the Ayatollah's already got 3 people in line who are just as hardline to replace him. I mean, he's got that contingency plan as an 86-year-old man. It is worrying, though, isn't it? Because the Ayatollah is talking tough, and he's saying if you strike us, then it's all-out war. But how? I mean, the thing that the Americans can say is, we're a long way away from you.
Yeah, but the Iran, although it's weakened in the region, still has assets to try to attack American interests. Remember, America's got tens of thousands of troops in the Middle East.
Yeah, true.
And they've actually built up that presence to put pressure on Iran. So you're talking about theaters like Iraq, where Iran has had influence for many, many years. You're talking about Syria, which has just recently got out and from the grip of the Assad regime, but where Iran has had influence. We're talking about Lebanon. Hezbollah is weakened, but Iran could still be active there. We're talking about Yemen, where Iran's allies, the Houthis, control much of the country. That's why I think the number one factor holding back, not Trump, but Trump officials from attacking Iran and pursuing talks are the Gulf states. And you talk about Saudi, you talk about the UAE. They're the folks that stand to lose if an American attack on Iran sets off a regional conflict.
So that's what they mean by all-out war. They don't mean with America necessarily. They just mean wherever Americans are that is close enough by, and they're dragging those other countries into the conflict.
Yeah. In other words, they act there. They wouldn't call it destabilizing. They'll call it defending the axis of resistance. But remember also, you cannot rule out Iran attacks on Israel if America attacks them. And although the Iranians got the worst of that 12-day war last June. They did inflict significant damage on the Israelis. And if you talk about Iran going after Israel, that means Israel could unleash everything it has on Iran. In other words, I've always compared the Trump administration to like a dog chasing a parked car. Right, fine, you can yap at the parked car, but when you catch up to it, what are you going to do with it?
That's always the question that I have too.
And I think in Venezuela, we don't know which way Venezuela is going to land. They had an escape clause that I'm not sure they thought would happen, in that they went for regime change. What they got was regime accommodation, that they agreed to kind of maneuver with the Americans. That doesn't happen with the Iran leadership. I mean, I cannot stand the Iran leadership. I cannot stand the repression, the oppression, but this is not a regime that is fractured in terms of the military being willing to ditch the supreme leader. Yeah. The best play here is, if you really want to put pressure on Iran, is you support people when they protest for the rights, you support their calls for justice, you make sure that those demands are heard, but you give Iranians the outlook they could have a better future. And you don't do that by attacking the country.
Just briefly, the British are going to be upping their defence spend, it seems. Is it enough, and is it quick enough?
Yeah, how much is enough when you talk about Vladimir Putin at this point? The latest country to talk about the threat of Russian hybrid warfare. So not just direct military operations, but cyber operations, sabotage. And we know the Russians have tried, for example, to get explosives on planes in recent years in Europe. Maritime operations, trying to cut cables. How far would Vladimir Putin go? And when that's the case, you have the immediate priority of defending Ukraine, where the European Union and the UK are filling the gap that has been left by the Trump administration. But then you talk about defending yourselves. And I think, the American simple formula is Donald Trump told everybody to increase defense spending. Look, the catalyst for defense spending here was when Vladimir Putin invaded Ukraine in February 2022, and when he has threatened to carry out attacks beyond that into Europe. And at that point, you have to say that you hope for the best, but you prepare for the worst. And I think it's doubly important for UK in this case, because remember, Brexit isolated the UK to an extent from Europe. It weakened security links. It meant that you didn't have the day-to-day cooperative channels that you've had. And the UK is having to repair that with Europe. We saw that at Davos recently with the European and UK leaders. So it's a question of UK, the European Union, and NATO all ramping up, not to hit a number, to make sure that you have a resilient system, that your cyber operations are resilient, your economy is resilient, and even that your information system is resilient when the Russians try to spread the disinformation and propaganda that they are the victims in all of this.
It's absolutely fascinating. Thank you, Scott. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you. I genuinely mean that. Thank you. Scott Lucas there, Professor of International Politics and founder and editor of EA Worldview. Quick break, back in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good evening. This is Talk and it's Petrie here with you. Do you use a Visa or a MasterCard? Most of our banking cards are backed by Visa, aren't they? Most of them are. 95% of all of transactions, 95% of all payments go through either Visa or MasterCard. They are American. And there's a lot of concern at the moment, particularly with the way Donald Trump uses things like finances to punish his so-called enemies, or to tell you off for doing something wrong, is to use finances against us. So that there's a real concern in the city at the moment that we are overly reliant on American banking systems that can be switched off in a split second, literally. So a lot of Europe is turning away from America in terms of digital sovereignty. They're trying to recreate digital platforms, even Zoom or Teams. They don't believe they're secure anymore. And these can be used against us. A lot of people are looking at America now as a threat to national security, as opposed to our close personal friends. And banking giants are looking into ways now to create an alternative payment system. Should the US decide to turn off payments like Visa and MasterCard, this is taking place this week, and the banks are going to pay for this new system to get up and running so that we all move from Visa and MasterCard, so that we are protected should Donald Trump decide to use switching off that system as a threat. And it would definitely have an impact on national security. Well, joining me now to discuss this is Adam French, Head of Consumer Finance at MoneyFacts. Hi, Adam, good to talk to you. A lot of us don't think about things like that, do we? We don't even consider that, oh yeah, that's an American system, and that can now be weaponized against us.
No, absolutely. Why would you even consider that in your day-to-day life? To be perfectly honest, it's just a name on a card when you're out doing the weekly shop, right? It's not really a huge consideration, but it is really serious. It's probably worth explaining exactly what these card networks are. So Visa and MasterCard, as you pointed out, 95% of card transactions go through these card networks, and you can think of them essentially as the pipes, the plumbing that connect different banks with your card, for example, so that when you make a payment, that data gets passed through that network to the bank to say, I need to withdraw money from X bank to be put into Y bank where I'm buying the goods or services. And they also have the data protection stuff in place. They have the stuff to make sure fraud doesn't happen. All of the kind of gubbins behind the scenes is run through these networks, and at the moment they are run out of the US predominantly, is where and in fact the other 5%, a lot of that's Amex, which again is a US based company as well. So this is a big issue should things ever go wrong with America. Now it is worth saying that the latest stuff coming out of this conversation is that it's not expected that we're going to get a massive replacement for Visa and MasterCard. It's more around sorting out some potential vulnerabilities with the systems and maybe having a UK equivalent service in the background. Now, this is something that has been in place in France for 30, 40 years now. They've got carte bancaire, so apologies for the terrible French accent, but basically bank card. And that's a system that they have in place, which partners with Visa and MasterCard. And so you'll get this CB logo on a lot of cards there. And that network is in place internally in France, and it gives them a much sense of domestic control and resilience in an increasingly volatile and unpredictable world, whether that's Donald Trump making threats and using US power to coerce people into doing what he wants, or more run-of-the-mill cyber attacks and espionage and things that we've seen coming from maybe other sides of the planet, right? So it's about having that security and that resilience at home to ensure that you can keep making payments should things go wrong elsewhere.
I mean, it really would be a massive deal, and we know that Donald Trump has used finances as weaponized the tariff system, for example, that he has weaponized. And if anybody steps out of line, I mean, we saw it with Greenland, right? He said he wanted Greenland, he was going to own Greenland, and if we didn't give him Greenland, we were going to get more tariffs. So it is not beyond, it's not ridiculous to think that he could turn to something like the Visa and MasterCard payments, knowing that that would cripple us. I mean, in Russia, 60% of all payments go through Visa and MasterCard, and that when America switched that off for Russia, the people couldn't pay for anything. They couldn't get food. They couldn't do anything. So it can be used as a weapon against us, or if not a weapon, then a persuasion tactic.
Yeah, it could definitely be used for coercion. I'd be stunned if it was ever used as a weapon against us. But then again, I've long got out the game of predicting what America's going to do next. No, absolutely, it could have quite a profound effect. And I think it's a sensible approach to take, is to look at how we can make sure we are resilient internally in the UK. And actually, again, Europe are doing exactly the same thing. They're looking at a European-wide system that gets them away from reliance on the US tech stack as well. These are sensible steps to be taken in an incredibly volatile world where it is harder to know who your friends are sometimes, and particularly given the dominance of the US and how for the last 80 years we have sort of taken for granted that the US is this global policeman, and we've allowed ourselves to become intertwined with them in so many different ways. And beginning to unpick that, you find examples like this where actually we are hugely reliant on them for something as fundamental as processing card transactions. And given the shift we've seen over the last 20-25 years away from using cash towards using card transactions more and more, that just amplifies the effect this could have 10-20-fold, right? But again, it is unlikely, and this new system wouldn't be... It's unlikely you'd see Visa and MasterCard disappear from your cards overnight, essentially. It's just that there'll be another system in play. We may see more partnerships. We may see a bit of a change in the background to what's happening. But I think as consumers, we can continue using our cards quite happily and be largely unaffected by all of this.
Do you think this is a wake-up call for us and for Europe, this whole over-reliance on American technology and digital platforms? Like I said, the whole of Europe now is looking to disentangle itself even from things like Zoom or Teams or even Microsoft. You know, they're trying to say, look, we cannot rely on America anymore. We can't rely on anybody. We've got to be self-reliant.
That's been the last 18 months really has been exactly that kind of wake-up call we need. I think the example of Zoom, the French government are saying that they can no longer trust that to be secure and reliable in the way they need. They're going to have their own system in place. These are conversations that are happening in governments across Europe at the moment. Exactly that. America is becoming an unreliable partner. I think we are always going to be friends with Americans, but whether we're friends with the American government is again up for debate. And that lack of reliability in who is a foundational partner for us in so many different ways, from defense through to technology, through to like our cultural exchanges, right? I mean, Hollywood movies, everything like that. There's so many ways we share bonds with one another, but that lack of reliability, that volatility you see right at the top, it does pose these really difficult questions. Now, you're still looking at some fairly lengthy timelines to sort this stuff out. So in theory, if there was to be an extra player in the market, an internal system for card payments, you're still looking at 2030 before that could be realistically put in place, by which time you're looking at Donald Trump as he is at the moment. Should Boyle Rights be out of power by then? Of course, who knows what would happen next and who'd be running the show then, or if he's still knocking around. But these things do not happen overnight. So it's a wake-up call, but it's certainly not something that can be done at the flick of a switch, unlike turning off our access, which unfortunately can be.
Which unfortunately can be, exactly that. Adam, it's such a pleasure to talk to you. Thank you very much indeed for joining me. Adam French, their Head of Consumer Finance at Money Fact. So, yeah, nothing to concern yourself with now, although I am thinking of getting some cash out this weekend. No, I'm joking. Anyway, stay where you are, because coming up we have Cody Darla, the comedy writer. He's going to be here to go through the front pages of the newspapers just for you.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Petrie here, this is Talk, and with me, Cody Darla, comedy writer and host of the Truth in My Opinion podcast. Good to see you.
Thank you, lovely to be here.
What do you think of the idea of having a machine that can predict criminals of the future, looking at children specifically, identifying them as potential criminals of the future, and then getting police and other agencies involved to stop them becoming criminals?
I mean, it sounds a load of rubbish to me. I think, is this AI?
This is AI, and the Ministry of Justice will deploy the machine, learning to identify at-risk children for early intervention. AI could be used to predict the criminals of the future under government plans to identify children who need targeted interventions to stop them falling into life of crime. It's already started last week. It was buried in the security AI information, so it's not. I've seen nobody talking about it.
Yeah, it sounds like nonsense to me. I mean, I think when it comes to something as sensitive as crime and criminality, I mean, there are so many different social and human factors at play. I don't think you can reduce it down or outsource it to a bit of code, which is what AI is. I'm becoming increasingly convinced that AI is like a bubble. I think there was a story today comparing it to like the Hindenburg, where it's this technology that they're desperate to commercialise, they're desperate to get out into the economy, and they run the risk of basically turning it into a flop because all of these different programs aren't ready. And so, you know, we end up with ridiculous things like, you know, AI videos with like 7 fingers on each hand.
Yeah.
So it's basically technology that isn't actually ready to to have commercial applications.
But this isn't the first time that a government has mooted the idea of identifying young children. I remember at a radio station I used to work with, it must have been a decade ago, although it could be longer, where I did a phone-in that I'm doing tonight, and that is that they were talking about identifying children at primary school level who were potential criminals. And look, you know, when my son was at primary school, you'd look at some of the kids and go, "You're right. You are a scrote. You are going to be a thug when you grow up."
Yeah.
I mean,
is that my purse?
yeah. But somebody in a playground's pointing out a kid and going, "Oh God, you look a bit like you could, you know, you're going to be a wrong 'un," isn't the same as getting authorities involved. And this is serious. This is. But the thing that concerns me, I think, with any AI is that it shares the same biases as the people who input the questions, right? Yeah. So my concern with this would be that children of single mothers or fathers are highlighted, that children of colour are highlighted, that children of poverty are highlighted, when I was pointing out earlier that some of the biggest criminals in the world at the moment are millionaires and billionaires.
Yeah, they probably own the AI companies.
They probably do. But it's that, isn't it? It's the whole trope of what creates a criminal. Do you think that anyone could become a criminal at any point?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think there are so many different grey areas when it comes to criminality. Like, you know, there's visible crime in the form of, like, you know, phone snatching and things like that. There's violent crime. And there's seemingly acceptable crime, which is the white-collar tax evaders who, you know, we just saw, you know, a few days ago, Jim Ratcliffe. I don't see why the fact that he resides in a tax haven and doesn't pay tax in the country that he earns the money isn't a crime. So I think the answer is absolutely
it's definitely
yes.
Morally wrong.
Everybody can commit a crime. And often they do.
Yeah, the reason this particularly fascinates me is because when I first started to go to Bosnia, and I was right at the beginning of the conflict there, and over a period of a couple of years, it is that what fascinated me was the breakdown of society. When there's a war going on, there are no police, there's no law, there's no courts, there's no, you know, normal structure of things. So what was really interesting to me was to hear the stories of the criminality that broke out. Even as much as there was one guy who was neighbours with another guy, and he hadn't returned his hedge trimmer, and there was a seething resentment, which ended up with the guy who didn't get his hedge trimmer back going and killing the guy who didn't give him the hedge trimmer back. So he became a murderer, was never prosecuted. Everybody in the region knew about it. You know, it wasn't a secret, and he'd been a normal bloke. And when you look at Ratko Mladic, he was a doctor. You know, all these people would not have been highlighted. He was one of the biggest war criminals, by the way, in Bosnia. He came up with the rape camps and things like that. So, but there would be no predictor of him becoming that kind of evil.
Of course. I mean,
that's what fascinates me, is that when if society broke down here and my life depended on me having to kill somebody else or having to steal, of course I would do it. I think we're all capable of becoming. I just am interested in that. What is a real predictor of criminality?
I think you're absolutely right. I think there will be baked into this code, which is exactly what this is, which is, you know, originally designed by a human being.
Yeah.
And we've already seen, you know, AI face
recognition with black people.
Yeah, exactly. It highlights black people more than any other racial group. We know it has biases and we know it's flawed. But like I say, I think what I'm slowly realising about AI is that there's a commitment, a continued commitment to roll it out and buy it and apply it to different areas of society. And when it's kind of entirely commercial, you think, well, okay, you know, if you're going to spend a fortune on an AI thing that ends up being rubbish, then so be it, you know, more fool you. But if you start applying it to genuinely important societal elements of society like criminality and predicting that, I think you're absolutely right in saying that it's incredibly worrying because
it's sinister.
It's sinister, and what is the basis? Like you say, you know, depending on what you change the context or you change, you know, any different element, it will have an effect whether someone could be a criminal or not. Like you said, you know, if society collapses is quite an extreme version, but there are a multitude of different steps before you get to societal collapse that will dictate someone's criminality.
I mean, is it fair though to say that poverty would be a predictor of crime? I mean, I have plenty of people, and I've been completely broke. I didn't turn to crime, but it. You know, are there things that the unsaid things? Is it poverty? Could poverty be a predictor of crime? Is it having a parent that's gone to prison? Could that be a predictor of crime? Could it be your religion? Could be a predictor of crime. I mean, these are the things. These are awkward questions to ask. I mean, I did speak to a criminologist, obviously, and she said no, that there are no real true predictors of criminality. But there might be some things that would give people a clue.
Yeah, but I mean, I don't think turning to AI is the answer, because, like you say, I'm sure there are clues. I'm sure being, you know, connected to poverty or closer to poverty than someone else could.
You know, being brought up in an area where there are gangs.
Yes, well, I mean, gangs, I imagine is quite a complicated thing, because, like you said, just because someone's poor doesn't mean necessarily they will join a gang. I mean, people join gangs for all kinds of reasons, whether it's, you know, a lot of the time it's social ostracism caused by people assuming they're going to join a gang anyway. So. I wouldn't. I mean, I'm not a criminologist, but I think, as we sort of touched on earlier, it's not poor people who are committing the crimes. Often, it's people driving around in Range Rovers. It's not the shoplifters that are the real problem. It's the tax dodgers. So it really depends on what your definition
of crime
is, which I guess goes back to the potential unhelpfulness of this sort of program. I mean, I would dread to think what the public contract is, and I hope it's software the government's bought and are operating on their own rather than paying an AI company. Yes, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, they're saying that they're going to be embedding AI across justice services. So across the whole lot. We'll be tried by AI.
I know, soon.
That's the worry, isn't
Yes.
it, when we're talking about getting rid of juries, which I don't believe will happen. I don't believe it will pass.
No.
But, you know, why not feed your crime into AI and all the evidence and see what the AI says?
You can imagine a Black Mirror, can't you?
No, but joking apart, this is actually serious. This is Lord Timpson, him of the keys.
Yes. Lock them
keys
up.
And shoes. And batteries for your phone. Anyway, not an advert. Lord Timpson, who is talking about this. This is the AI Action Plan for Justice, the first of its kind document outlining how we will harness the power of AI to transform the public's experience, I bet, making their interactions with justice systems simpler, faster and more tailored to their needs. So you'll be talking to an AI bot when you report your crime. That was already in the papers, I think, a couple of weeks ago. You know, Timpson's a huge fan of AI, and he's saying that it'll be impactful and it'll be adopted across government.
It's nonsense. Because, I mean, for goodness sake, it's like, I imagine probably crime more than health even. If you've just been mugged, the last thing you want to be doing is telling a chatbot.
I agree.
Like, that's exactly
what I said.
the scenario in which you need a human being to acknowledge what you've just
trauma.
been through. Yeah. You can't be sort of, hello there, please type in your select option A, B, or C.
Which crime?
Which crime? Have you been mugged? Have you been stabbed? That's crazy. It's crazy.
But it's coming.
It's coming because, I mean, people like Timpson want to roll it out. I mean, I just despair at the sort of the lowest common denominator resolution for that our leaders have for our big societal problems. You don't tackle crime by automating the entire process of justice.
And
it's
criminalising
nonsense.
kids.
And criminalising kids, exactly.
They want to use AI supporting better decisions through predictive and risk assessment models.
Yes, we only need better decisions because this lot can't seem to make any. Nonsense.
No, that's not true. They do make decisions, they just go back on them.
And they're also bad.
They do make them in the first place. That was slightly unfair there. I mean, what I despair about is having read 1984 several times in my lifetime, and in fact I've just got another copy to read because I lent my last one to my sister, who didn't give it back. Honestly, family.
There you go. Is that in the criminality stats, do you think?
Yes.
She'll be on the system?
Yeah, she'll be on the system. We're sort of joyfully skipping towards that kind of world.
Yes.
And I'm kind of going, why are we?
Yeah, I agree. I think it should be, it's an important discussion, and it shouldn't simply be the accepted route.
No, and why was this part of this AI thing kept so quiet?
And where's all the data going?
Yeah.
Who owns the data?
Well, exactly that. And these poor little kids, I mean, some of them might turn out to be criminals, but at least give them a chance.
You might as well if you're going to be told that you're going to be one by a computer.
I mean, that is the other thing, isn't it? The psychology of it. You know, you're criminalising kids.
Yeah.
What's the problem? You know, well, I might as well then. Going to do it. Should we take a break? Cody and I'll be back in just a moment.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you, and with me is the wonderful Cody Darla, comedy writer and host of the Truth in My Opinion podcast, and also you can find him on TikTok as Mr. Cody Darla and Instagram, and he's very funny. Actually, I haven't seen you for a bit. Are you not doing any, or has my algorithm denied me your pleasure?
It's quite possible that the AI has highlighted me as a criminal and so isn't sharing my things, but
yeah,
I post every day.
It's that shaved head.
Yeah, that's probably a factor, to be fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, skinhead and an earring.
Yeah. You're definitely a wrong one.
I'm definitely heading towards a hate crime or
Yeah,
something.
you're definitely heading towards a hate crime. Right, let's have a look at the papers. The Sun newspaper, 7 UK forces on Epstein case, Lolita flight logs check. Now, these are the flights of Epstein's aircraft, one of his private aircrafts that was known as the Lolita Express. And that flew into, I believe, Stansted and one other airport. I can't remember, was it Gatwick? I think it was Gatwick. And so they're now looking at those flight logs to see if young women were trafficked into the UK. And of course, there have been at least suggestions that there was a woman brought to the UK for the purposes of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor's entertainment.
Yes, at the Royal Lodge.
At the Royal Lodge. Although he has denied all claims of wrongdoing. Cops in Andy sex probe. What is interesting, though, for me, is that you've got people in France falling on their sword. You've got people in Italy falling, being pushed onto their sword, actually, having to resign, being shamed, being investigated. Nobody in America.
No, of course not. No.
I mean, it is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it really is.
Not a single... In fact, Todd Blanche, the Assistant Attorney General, and Pamela Bondi, the Attorney General, have both said there's no evidence in there to support any wrongdoing and no co-conspirators.
Well,
it's over.
They're quite literally brainwashed, aren't they? It is. I mean, I think actually there's no greater proof that MAGA is a cult than this, because, like you say, the willful misrepresentation of literal evidence in order to absolve the crimes of Donald Trump and all of the other people named.
Well, look, even if he is innocent of any crimes, he is mentioned in the Epstein files more than Harry Potter is mentioned in all of the Harry Potter books.
Yes.
And therefore would be a really good witness, right?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Even if he is completely innocent of every single
even if he is,
crime,
imagine that,
then he would at least be a witness. And also there are some, credible reports that have never been examined about Donald Trump.
Yeah.
But I just find it really fascinating. I wonder if the American people are, because their press is so subdued, whether they're actually hearing about all of the cases in the UK. I mean, 7 forces now have been set up, special forces with special connections to each other, in order that if more victims come forward, that their witness statements will be taken, and all of those things will happen, but not in the US.
Well, this is something I come across making political content on Instagram, things like that. I get a lot of Americans commenting, being like, I'm so glad that other countries are taking action or whatever.
Oh,
and
so
I know
aware.
but there is always that undertone of it being new information. You're right. I think the American press, I mean, our press is also captured by vested interest, but in America it's a completely different ballgame, especially when
freer. It is freer here.
Oh yes, of course.
Yeah.
I mean, we've not got Keir Starmer trying to sue television companies for editing.
And nobody tells me what to say, for example.
No, certainly no one tells you what to say. No one would dare. But yeah, I think America is lost. I think I've come on here and said that before. They're entirely lost. I'm sure there are so many millions of people who are incredibly frustrated and want Donald Trump, to be impeached and for him to be all of this evidence to come out. Or for it at least to be analysed, and like you say, for him to be brought forward as a witness.
Look, being entirely non-partisan in this, the truth is that there are so many victims here.
Totally.
And this was a major sex trafficking network. At the very least, there has to be accountability and also an understanding of how this sex trafficking ring worked. So there should be investigations, because if it's still running, it needs to be torn down. Who is responsible? What countries allowed this to happen? Were we checking flight logs well enough? Were we protecting women and girls well enough? There are so many questions to be answered that it shouldn't actually be up to America.
Completely.
Because this is a worldwide sex trafficking organisation.
Also, this is, the political fallout. I mean, this is what's kind of, I'm no defender of Keir Starmer, but that Keir Starmer is the most prominent politician who might be facing the sack over this, and he's not even named in the files, I think speaks volumes. The men who have committed these crimes are and continue to be protected because our institutions, our frameworks have been co-opted and controlled by this small group of people who willingly commit the most horrific and heinous crimes you can imagine.
Yeah.
And I think that the absence of, like you say, those investigations, the absence of those people like Donald Trump saying, I'm going to talk about what I know because what I saw is proof, if you ask me, of their guilt. Because why else would you be ignoring
I mean,
it?
look, we see with Donald Trump anyway, the whole Canada Bridge thing that he was going to...
Right.
Because his friend owned the bridge next door, a billionaire. This is true.
Yeah, of course. Oh my God, I don't
The billionaire,
disbelieve.
he had a billionaire mate who owned the bridge. When I say next door, it's probably a few miles away.
Yeah.
I don't really know it. But, and he was upset because there was a new bridge opening which would reduce his tolls by half at least. So there's always a game to be played there that we're witnessing now. But yeah, I mean, this shouldn't just be America's decision. This can't.
No,
be.
it's not. It's not America's decision. It shouldn't be. But we also, which I guess goes back to the story that's on the front page of the Sun, have this pathetic spectacle of Andrew Mountbatten Windsor locking himself down in Sandringham and wandering around on his horse all day, when we know he was one of Epstein's closest associates, and he's been called on by the Prime Minister to testify in America, and he's just not going to do it. He's just not going to do it.
The King's even suggested that he should do
it. There's probably... I would be censored heavily on this programme just from all the swears, but words can't describe what a little rat this man is.
I completely agree.
He needs to be smoked out.
Absolutely nasty piece of work. We can say that.
We can. Good.
Right, let's have a look at the Times newspaper. Labour may drop youth wage pledge to boost jobs. 1 in 6 18 to 24-year-olds is out of work because firms consider them too costly to hire. So this was one of the pledges to put up the wages over 21 and between those between 18 and 20 were to receive £10 an hour. But that is acting as a block now for those first jobs that we all had.
Yeah.
Well, I had anyway.
It's a really difficult situation, one that I myself went through, and I've got a younger brother, similar, his friends are in this scenario where the job market is ever competitive, and you've got to you've got to stand out, and often that standout means experience, and
you don't get that experience.
You don't exactly. It's so hard if you're applying with an empty CV. It's very hard to get a job, and these are retail jobs. There was someone, I'm not sure if it's in this article or another I read, but someone who it took 4 months for them to get a care job, and that's an industry we're told time and time again is completely overloaded and desperate for people to work. So there's something going wrong with.
But it's these entry-level jobs that also are being consumed by AI.
AI is certainly a factor. Yeah, you used to get the intern to come in and do the sums or whatever. Or
exactly, in accountancy firms, or do the photocopying, or do the stuff like that.
Yeah.
But there's 45% of small companies that employed 16 to 20-year-olds were recruiting fewer workers as a result of the changes. And I suppose that's the point, isn't it? If they're going to cost as much as a 21-year-old and you've got a 16-year-old applying for the job, you might go for the 21-year-old who has that bit more potential experience, or certainly life experience.
Yeah, completely. I mean, I really do feel really sorry for this group of people that are trying to apply, because, like I say, I really empathise, and I remember being in that position where you just don't really know what to do, because you're like, all of these jobs want me to have experience, but every job I apply for often won't respond to me. And I think that's something that we don't talk often enough about, which is this the ease at which companies just don't give people an answer.
I know, that's disgusting.
It is disgusting because people invest so much time in an application and they don't even get a response, and I think that contributes a lot more catastrophically to people's morale and people's ability to keep going and finding a job.
I agree.
When you apply for 50 jobs, you don't get... Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, you don't get anything back. What's the point?
Yeah.
Absolutely, what's the point? But yeah, I feel really sad that there's going to be this push point where they have to earn less in order to just get a foot in the door. This will apply a lot to hospitality as well, the hospitality industry as well.
It's, it's tricky.
Fabulous picture of Prue Leith, Dame Prue Leith, 86 years old, modelling. I like that hat.
Is it a nice hat? Is that a hat or some sort of... It looks like some sort of midsummer...
creation. It looks like she's got flowers growing out of her head, but I like it. I would wear that.
I can imagine you wearing that outfit.
Yeah, I'd look good in that.
Yeah, you would.
Yeah. Might wear
Tomorrow's show, maybe.
Yeah, maybe. Although the camera would have to be a bit higher to keep the hat in. Just before we go to the break, the Reverend Jesse Jackson, he's mentioned on a lot of the front pages, even if it's just a pointing to a bigger story further on in the newspaper. He died at the age of 84. He had been unwell. He'd had a very progressive neurological disease and linked to Parkinson's, I believe. But what a life well led. Extraordinary when his entire life was in the service of others.
Yes, and also sort of creating a pathway for younger sort of African-American
I mean, there's
politicians.
a lot of people are attributing Obama to the fact that Jesse Jackson tried to become the Democratic nominee a couple of times. I think the first one was in 1984. But he'd spent his whole life trying to make everybody equal. That's the gay community as well, that everybody who was othered, he tried to bring together and fought hard for equality. And it really resonated with me because of Suella Braverman earlier on saying, when we take over, we're going to get rid of the Equality Act. On the day that Jesse Jackson died, that really slapped me in the face, actually.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's the politics of compassion and understanding and dignity versus hate and division, which is what, reform that awful lot.
I mean, I don't know what's wrong with equality.
Yeah, well...
I'm kind of a bit confused.
If you've got a problem with it, then you clearly benefit from it, I think, as in...
You benefit from a lack of equality.
Exactly, a lack of it. If you're actively trying to prevent people from having the same experiences as you, then you're just a nasty piece of work.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? It's like the whole MAGA lot. It is them saying, I don't care if bad things, if bad things do happen to me, as long as worse things happen to somebody else.
Exactly. Yeah. It's the it's sort of a sort of evil satanic meritocracy, isn't it?
I just don't know what's wrong with equality. I genuinely, I'm perplexed.
Well, I mean, I know you know this, but the reason they want to repeal the Equality Act is because it's just the same old political strategy, isn't it? Which is division. Yeah. Don't look at the actual structural problems. Don't look at the tax dodgers. Don't look at the investment in public services that they're all looking to slash and enable. Look at the gay person next to you, or look at the immigrant, or look at the black person down the road. They're the real problem.
So they want to turn this country into a true meritocracy, but that can only happen with equality.
Of course. Yeah, those two things are completely at odds. Let's create a meritocracy
without equality.
Without equality, yeah. So the entrenched benefits that people experience when they're born, depending on where they're born and who they're born to, will be exaggerated under a reformed government.
Yeah, will become the form of meritocracy.
Yes, that's right. Because we all know meritocracy starts the moment you're born.
There is no such thing as
parents.
meritocracy.
No, of course not.
I don't know any company or any profession that works within a meritocracy.
There's a book, isn't there, that was a satire. I always forget the name of it, but it was called the Great Meritocracy or something like that. It was a British, published by I think a British former political advisor. It was almost a dystopian satirical novel that has been now taken and run with. This idea of a meritocracy was meant to be satirical because it's not possible.
It's not possible.
But now it's one of our core aspirations.
Yeah, great. Right, let's take a break. Work in a sec.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, good to have your company. It's Petrie here with you, with me, Cody Darla, a comedy writer and host of the Truth in My Opinion podcast. Let's have a look at the Telegraph. Reeves blocking a defence cash boost. That was only decided today, wasn't it? That we're going to put more money into defence. She's resisting pressure from military chiefs to spend billions on more on defence. So there you go. Yeah, there's another picture of Prue there.
Yeah, what is this event? Holly bush dress made out of the plant leaves and stems from the king's private estate.
Oh.
She wore it down the catwalk.
At the Arts Hotel London. Opening London. Is that
Week.
already here? Gosh, London Fashion Week.
In February.
They haven't asked me to walk yet.
Have they not?
No.
I've just come from there.
Oh,
yeah, I've been going up and down the catwalk all afternoon.
You're a bit taller than me.
Yeah.
I don't think there's much of a space for a 5'2" model, is there? Everything would sort of hang off me. I have to wear the children's clothes.
The miniature clothes.
Right, let's have a look at the Daily Mail. Pressure piles on Andrew as fourth police force probes Epstein claims. Essex officers to examine whether a paedophile, meaning Epstein, trafficked woman on a private jet into Stansted. So they'll be looking at the flight logs and things like that, I guess.
There's also the added element, I think this may be on another one of the front pages, about Andrew's sort of time as a trade envoy.
Yeah.
And passing, a similar situation to Mandelson, passing on confidential information to Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah.
So
that is actually the more interesting, the more likely to see him being questioned, I would have imagined. Because if you're going to question Mandelson for a very similar thing, then there is no reason not to question.
I know, and he's a commoner now, isn't he?
He's a commoner now.
Not even a member of the royal family.
But yeah, he doesn't have any protections at all, and he wouldn't even if he were still a prince. Right, the Mirror. Reform jokers are dangerous. No laughing matter. Farage cabinet full of Tories who would hammer ordinary Brits. Grinning Farage unveiled his top team full of Tory turncoats who've already trashed Britain once. The Reform UK leader picked Robert Jenrick, Suella Braverman, Richard Tice and Zia Youssef for key roles amid warnings that they could damage the economy, the NHS and hard-won workers and equality rights. It's an interesting one because there was rumours leaked, weren't there, about that Farage wouldn't want to become Prime Minister. He doesn't want to become Prime Minister, so he's made Tice his deputy Prime Minister.
That Farage doesn't want to become Prime Minister?
No, he doesn't want the job.
Oh,
being a Prime Minister.
He doesn't want to...
I suppose the work and that, it's boring. It must be really boring.
To be Prime Minister?
Yeah.
Come on, no way.
All those committee meetings about transport and tarmac and potholes.
They're not on those. They're PMs, not talking about potholes. He's flying around the world. Keir Starmer is anyway. He's off to Beijing and he's at Davos.
But that's him, isn't it?
Well, that's true. But I mean,
there
he's
must be a lot of really boring paperwork to go through.
I mean, Farage would just down
and he
the pub,
also wouldn't earn enough.
Well, I mean, thank God Farage has 12 other jobs.
Yeah.
So thank God for that. I can't imagine he'd stop his cameos being PM. He could probably hoist those prices up a bit. But yeah, this Richard Tice was meant to be put in charge of the Treasury, but now we've got the enormous talent that is Robert Jenrick. I mean, a man whose political record is so glowing that he loses the Conservative leadership race to someone as incompetent as Kemi Badenoch, and then, let slip his printed speech, leaving it on his desk, that's then discovered, causing his sacking. So, I mean, this is a man who clearly should be put in charge of the nation's purse strings.
And Braverman, I mean, that is a
She's
joke,
now in charge
isn't
of
it?
equalities in education.
Yeah.
I mean, she's going to get rid of half of her brief on day one, because she says she's going to get rid of the Equalities Act. And we've got Zia Youssef, who's in charge of migration, even though it should be said he's not even an MP. So
yeah,
I mean, yeah, we're looking at the future of British politics for sure. All 5 of them privately educated. Farage slapped down a female journalist from the Financial Times, telling her to write a silly story when she asked him about...
Well, that's just the Donald Trump playbook, isn't
exactly,
it? It all of it is. This DEI inequalities thing, that's from Trump's playbook as well. It's the same thing. But Braverman, who completely failed in her...
Sacked twice.
Sacked twice
as Home Secretary from the same job. I know. Imagine that. Well, I'm actually quite delighted by this, Petrie, that we've got a small insight into the Reform UK front bench, because I now think it's so utterly mediocre, even though we knew that this was the gang anyway. Just seeing them all there laughing and grinning, you can kiss goodbye to that election, I think, Nigel. They're not winning now.
Well, I mean, and also the new, what's it called? Not Reform, Remote? No.
Yes, Rupert Lowe.
What's that called? The new Reform.
Yeah, Lebensraum UK or something.
Restore
UK.
Okay,
yes.
So Restore Britain UK. So you've got the Tories leaving to go to Reform and the Reformers leaving to go to Restore.
Yes.
Where do you go after that?
I wonder where you go after that. Maybe the Communist Party? Maybe there's some sort of weird circular thing. You go so far right that you end up
accidentally turn left and go, what am I doing here?
Oh, I've also just remembered another excellent highlight from both Jenrick and Suella Braverman, which is, of course, they walked into the wrong chamber to
That's right, and accidentally voted against their own interests, or against Reform's interests.
Yes, so anyone thinking of voting Reform, just bear that in mind, that this really is...
They walked into the yay chamber instead of the nay chamber, and once they were in there, their vote was counted as a yay.
I really, really do believe they are Reform UK's sharpest minds, though, so I do just want to make that clear.
Yeah, possibly right. The Daily Star, Ramsey, tough childhood made me a better dad. Fiery chef Gordon Ramsay says his horror upbringing with a violent alcoholic father has made him a better dad, but he feels guilty about his wayward brother. Again, going back to what we were saying about AI, would he have been highlighted as a potential criminal and not a fabulous chef?
And not a chef, yeah, it must be said, yeah.
I mean, yeah, he's such a nice guy.
Imagine a world without Gordon Ramsay.
I can't. It's too painful. So that's the star, and some very nice tweed.
Very nice tweed, yeah.
Would you ever wear tweed?
Maybe in a few years' time.
Which one of those outfits would you think?
I think the one for me. I think probably the one in the middle. But I don't really wear turtlenecks. Maybe the one on the left, the sort of red tweedy.
Yeah, that's nice. That would suit you.
Quite
Actually,
nice.
that would suit you.
Yeah, I think so.
Nice. Right, let's go to the FT. The plug pulled on high-tech bid to ease trade flows at border. 110 million spent on post-Brexit project. What? Oh, the high-tech bid to ease trade flows at border. Right, oh good, so that's some more money wasted. And Jesse Jackson on the front page. He was a dude.
I know,
He
very
was a
cool.
handsome dude.
The turtleneck as well,
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
making an appearance.
Yeah, that big moustache and
Yeah.
everything. He was a good-looking man.
A very cool look.
Very cool, especially in that era, right? I mean, he just had it all going on. He looked great. The rights leader who saw the US go from King's killing to Obama presidency. Yeah, an extraordinary man. Right, just quickly, Putin critic, after Navalny frog toxin killing exposed, I never touch a door handle. It's not paranoia, says Russian who named Kremlin's nerve agent assassins. I know I'm on his death list. Oh my God, what would that be like?
Being on Putin's death list, I wouldn't enjoy it, I don't think.
I mean, you'd be nervous for anybody walking at you with an umbrella across a bridge on a foggy night.
Across a bridge on a foggy night? Are you kidding me? Of course you'd be terrified.
Of an umbrella.
There's a lot of things to be scared of in that scenario, I think.
There's quite
the
a
dark,
lot.
the fog, Putin, the umbrella.
River.
Yeah, the river, you could fall in, you could drown. Yeah, I mean, this guy must go nowhere. He must be stuck in the same room for years if he doesn't touch a door handle.
That is terrifying, isn't it?
Yeah.
Russia has obviously denied this frog toxin. It's 2 years since Navalny died, I think yesterday.
Is it really?
Yeah, it's 2 years.
That kind of feels longer to me.
Yeah, well, I go through moments where I think it was only yesterday, and then I go through moments where I think, oh, that's such a long time ago.
I've not heard from him in a while.
No, yeah, that
2
would be
years.
it. 2 years. And of course, this guy is in trouble. He's not liked by the Kremlin for naming the men who sprayed Novichok on the front door of double agent Sergei Skripal's home in Salisbury in 2018.
Oh, I see. That's why he's
in trouble.
He's named and shamed them. Yes. Well. Yeah, I think there are more ways you can be got rid of in Putin's regime than a door handle. So I think you might want to watch out for some balconies as well.
Yeah, never go to anything above ground floor.
Don't go above ground
There's
level.
a lot of people that accidentally fall from balconies in
I know,
Russia.
it's amazing, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's like convicted paedophiles in the US who kill themselves suspiciously.
Suspiciously or not.
Or not.
Let's take a break. Back in a sec.
across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, this is Talk, and it's Petrie here with you and with me, Cody Darla, who is a comedy writer and host of the Truth, in my opinion, podcast. And as I said, you can find him on TikTok and Instagram under Mr. Cody Darla, and I really do recommend it because he's very, very funny. The I newspaper, third police force. So some are saying third, some are saying fourth, some are saying seven.
Yes, it's one of those.
It's one of those. But cross-party MPs consider whether to open an investigation into Andrew's work as UK trade envoy after documents in the Epstein files appeared to show him sharing confidential reports. There should be no question.
Yeah, no, I wonder
if
what they're
they're
considering.
opening an investigation into... Well, I suppose they're waiting for the police, because the police are looking into opening an investigation into his time as trade envoy as well, and looking into Mandelson. So I suppose there's this would be an internal investigation.
Yes,
of MPs,
not binding.
Probably not very interesting. So maybe not a good idea. But it's a better idea if the police do it, and if they can find any criminality, then at least they'll deal with it in that regard. So that's
sure.
The Guardian. Lovely picture there of Jesse Jackson, and the quote, "We stood on his shoulders." I think that's from Obama. But many people today paying tribute to this man who just gave his life, a life well lived. I mean, there aren't many people who give their life to the service of freedom and equality for everybody, right?
Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, a sad loss.
Yeah, at 84, it's not quite old enough for somebody like him. He should have been gifted a bit of a longer life and a happier end of his life as well. This is disastrous, isn't it? There were 1 in 9 new homes built in areas of flood risk.
Yeah.
What are we doing?
Well, I think I seem to remember I was talking about a similar issue last time I came on. This is private developers
buying cheap land.
They don't give a toss whether it's going to be safe or... I mean, we've seen this with the cladding. You know, they don't even care if it's fireproof, let alone if there's going to be a flood in 5 years. It's, again, you know, half of these developers go bust anyway, so they can't be held to account, which is exactly the problem we're having with the cladding, because there's no one to be held to account, and the government are now having to pay out billions, or they're trying to resist doing that. This is just going to be another future...
catastrophe.
Cladding problem, yeah. Where we've got new houses, people spending, you know, paying top whack to buy a new flat to get on the housing ladder, and then there's a flood and they discover that they're either not covered or it's been built on a floodplain. And you could argue that, you know, maybe that's part of buying a house, making sure you do those checks, but like, we have such low housing stock in this country that it's not, if you can afford to get on the ladder, it's not possible. Basically, if 1 in 9 of your new homes are in a floodplain, people are going to buy those anyway because they're so desperate to get homes.
Yeah, and then you find you can't sell your property, even if yours didn't flood, but the next door's did. You know,
yeah, exactly.
then
you
you're
won't be
on
able
a
to
list,
get insurance.
and you can't get the insurance, and people can't get their mortgages for it because they can't get insured, and then you can't sell your property. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of homes now where people are trapped in these properties, and they can't get out of them. They can't sell them. They're worthless. They're absolutely valueless. They have no money at all.
It's awful. And these companies will turn around or the government will have to spend billions and billions and billions on flood prevention measures.
Yeah.
Which because the profit makers have just
Well, it's the profit makers and the other profit makers, the water companies who are not doing their job well enough, and the environment agencies who should be, you know, how is planning permission given for these areas? What are the local councils doing? Why aren't they checking to see if everything is flood-proof before allowing properties to be built there? And it's just this race to the bottom, isn't it? It's just this money-grabbing councils who want to sell the land no matter what it costs, you know, and then the, as you said, the property developers going, well, that's cheap land, I'll buy that, and who cares if it floods? And then you've got, you know, good, hard-working people trapped into these properties that they can't, that are without value. I mean, I remember when I was selling my last place, and this young couple came round, and they absolutely loved it, right? It's an old Muse house, and they absolutely loved it. They had a little baby, and they said, we really want to buy this house. We really want it. It's exactly what we're looking for. And the estate agent was being really quiet, and I did wonder why, but I just said, oh, that's really lovely. Yeah, if you go through, you know, make the offer and all that sort of thing. And after they left, the estate agent rang me and said, they're not going to buy your place. And I said, well, why not? And he said, well, because they've got a flat up the road with illegal cladding, and they can't sell it.
Oh my God.
And I really, my heart broke for them, that they bought this flat up the road, and I know the flats are really nice. They bought this place before they had the baby, and it was, they didn't know it had some kind of, you know, illegal cladding on it, and they can't sell it.
That's crazy.
They're probably still there to this day.
Yeah,
people's 4 or 5 years
people's
ago.
lives are being ruined by this corporate greed.
I completely agree. It was so sad, because obviously they're now probably in a 1-bedroom flat with this kid growing up,
awful.
And they wanted a place with a garden, and they, you know, I felt so sad for them. I really genuinely did. I thought, well, that's a shame. The Daily Express. Millions are crying out for reward of hard work. Labour was branded the silent killer of aspiration as the jobless rate hits 5.2%. Millions are crying out for that reward of hard work. It would feel good to be rewarded for working hard, wouldn't it? But a lot of people's wages are so low.
Yeah, yes,
that
exactly.
they're not being rewarded for getting up in the morning and going to work.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Yeah, I mean, there are millions of people in work who. This is a quote from a Tory person, which seems about right to me. This idea that working hard is rewarding. There are
just try and
millions
remember
of people being exploited
the Tories didn't reward hard work either.
Yes, exactly,
so,
exactly.
Let's just be fair about that.
Yes.
But yeah, I think also people are becoming really cynic, you know, really weighed down by the taxes on you know, working very basic levels of jobs and being, you know, taxed at an enormous rate, and finding it really, really difficult to make ends meet. And it feels like a bit of a thankless task, to be honest.
Yeah.
And the Independent. John Rentoul, I love John. I've interviewed John a few times, actually. John Rentoul, he's a terrific commentator, political commentator, and it says at the top of the Independent, by unveiling his top team, Nigel Farage has just lost the election. And I have been saying that for a while, actually, that the number of Tories that have gone into reform, it's just the same people who failed to do the job well last time. They're the people that the British public voted out of office.
Yes.
And, you know, now we see that the front bench is just going to be stuffed full of people that failed us last time.
Yeah, I think John Crace, the Guardian sketch writer, had a great phrase, which is the talent puddle.
Yeah,
that is right wing politicians.
That's hilarious. They've got indefinite to jail term fiasco. This is the main story on the front page of the Independent. Secret files show plan to end prison scandal will fail. Internal figures reveal the government's bid to tackle IPP prisoners is a failure, leaving at least 500 inmates languishing without release 18 years after the controversial sentence was abolished. But it hasn't been abolished. We're still able to incarcerate people for...
I don't think an indefinite amount of time. No, it has to have a, like, there are life sentences that's like 25
No, there is
years,
indefinite. Oh, that last copper was set down for that long.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I think he's got no right to appeal. Anyway, Cody, Darla, your time has ended.
It has. Thank you for having me.
It's not indefinite here. So thank you very much for coming in, Cody Darla. Like I said, look him up. He's really good. So make sure you check him out. Coming up, though, it is just going to be you and me. And we're going to be talking about whether you believe there is such a thing as a predictor of criminality.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello and a very good morning to you. It is Talkback and it is Petrie here with you. So I want you to do exactly that. Talk back. This whole hour is dedicated to you, to your views, to your opinions and to your stories. And I really, this is a topic that really does interest me. And that is that can you predict a future criminal by their upbringing, by their social strata, by their skin colour, by their religion? Is it possible to predict future criminality given the way a child is brought up? Single parents, for example, are they more likely to have criminal children? Are parents who are have spent time in prison, are their children more likely to become criminals or less likely because they saw their parents go through it? And the reason I'm asking this is because the Ministry of Justice is going to deploy a machine to identify at-risk children for early intervention to help prevent them falling into a life of crime. So not at risk in terms of violence at home or bad things, not that sort of at risk, but at risk of becoming criminal. So AI could be used to predict the criminals of the future under government plans to identify children who need targeted interventions. The programme, launched by the Ministry of Justice last week, nobody's talking about it, it's buried deep, will aim to develop a system that can alert schools, health staff, police and other professionals to individuals most likely to be drawn into a life of crime. So what are they going to be telling this machine? What are they going to be telling the AI? What are they going to be saying? Are they going to be saying, well, look, if this kid's got a single mum, that's a predictor of crime. If this kid is poor, that's a predictor of crime. I want to know what they're feeding the AI in order for them to predict a future criminal. This is deeply, deeply sinister. And it is reminiscent of that film, The Minority Report. The idea that you can predict crimes happening, you can predict a child, I'm talking young kids, primary school age children, turning to crime in their future. And what are the police going to do? I mean, they haven't committed a crime yet, so... And could it have the potential to actually criminalise the children who are on a future pathway to criminality? Or we're pulling you aside because we reckon you're going to be a right wrong, and we're gonna start treating you like a criminal now because we think you're going to be one in the future. I mean, look, one of the best ways to stop young people turning to crime is to give them support. Where there are youth centres, proper substantive youth centres, which have got, people helping with homework, they might have mental health experts, these places do exist. Where they exist, the youth crime is almost at zero. So it doesn't seem to be that ridiculous to me, that it's not a big leap, it's not rocket science to figure out that what the young people probably need to prevent them getting into a life of crime is perhaps somewhere safe to go and do their homework. Because maybe they come from a family which has got, they're sharing bedrooms, so they can't get their homework done. And then they fall behind at school, and then crime seems to be the only option, right? So you give them a place to go and do homework. Also suggesting that single mothers are somehow failing. That really does annoy me. I mean, there are bad parents, right? There are bad parents. They really are. There are horrible parents around. I have to be honest with you, mine weren't the most supportive or loving in the world, but they were white and middle class, so perhaps that's okay. I mean, I had to leave home when I was just under 17, so maybe that would have been a predictor for me. My mother divorced a couple of times, whatever. So what are the predictors? What are they suggesting could make a future criminal? My son was brought up by a single mother. I can assure you he's not a criminal of any description. He works, he pays his tax, he's a good member of society. But would he have been on the list as a little boy for having a single mum as a predictor of criminality? What about black kids? My son had a lot of black friends, he still does. And some of them had single mothers. Some of the nicest kids I've ever known. They were certainly very polite to me, and lovely. And they've gone on to do fantastic jobs. So what is the predictor? That's the question I'm asking, really. What predicts criminality? I happen to believe that any one of us has the potential to become criminal if the world around us changed substantially enough. Any one of us. So how do you predict that? And then as I said earlier, you're looking at one of the biggest sex trafficking rings this world has ever seen, polluted by and large by rich, entitled white men. There was no predicting that, or perhaps there was predicting that. So how do we predict this? What are we saying here? Because if you're going to put into that black boy single mum, that's just a racist trope. That's not being specific. That's just saying, oh well, you know, black boys, single mum, bound to become a criminal. I mean, that is horrible. So what is being fed into these machines? And do you think that it is possible to predict that a child will become a criminal given their upbringing? Is it possible? You might say, well, a child living on an estate, a rough, you know, estate, has a greater chance of being dragged into a gang. I wouldn't argue with you about that. But that is, you know, that is them being the victim at the beginning of all of this. They then may go on to be the perpetrator, but they certainly begin that journey as the victim of being groomed into these gangs. So what are we saying here? That poverty, okay, poverty is an indicator of criminality. Is it though? Are poor children more likely to go on to be criminals? I mean, that seems to be unjust and unfair. There's plenty of very hard-working, decent, poor people in this country who wouldn't dream of turning to crime. So what is it? And all the while that single mums and poverty is being blamed for creating criminals, let's go back to just after the Second World War, where there were hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of single mothers living in poverty. So what are we saying? I think that's what concerns. What is going to be fed into what are the machines going to be told to look out for? And does it serve any real purpose? And is it just sinister? This over-reliance on computers telling us who the wrong uns are, instead of society supporting each other into ensuring that they don't become criminals, into giving them equal opportunities, into giving them equal education. We know that education isn't equal. We know the NHS isn't equal. You know, giving them all a chance to actually do something with their lives, supporting them through that. I would imagine that would be a better way to prevent criminality, rather than labelling a 6-year-old a potential criminal and then surrounding them with police and other people. Is that really going to help? Give me a call. 0344 499 1000. Calls are charged at the national rate, but we do call you back. And text the word talk and your message to 87222. I mean, maybe you were brought up in a poor household. Maybe you did turn to criminality. Maybe you didn't, but your brother did, or your sister did. Because how do you explain that as well? You can have an entire family where everybody is law-abiding, but one of the siblings is a criminal. So how does that work? I just don't know if there is an easy predictor of somebody becoming a criminal. Not easy enough to sort of feed into an algorithm anyway. Let's go to the phones. Sheldon is on the line. Good morning, Sheldon.
Good morning, Petrie. This is in relation to last night. This is your Martian speaking.
Good to speak to you.
Sorry about that. Okay, this is a very serious topic, very serious. And I'll start with the AI problem. I don't know what you've noticed lately, but it's become common. If you go into Google search at the moment, instead of getting a list of answers which you can possibly choose for yourself, it now tells me that it is thinking.
Yes. I noticed. Do you know? I noticed that just yesterday.
No,
I think that's new.
It is obviously not thinking.
No,
it can't think. So what it's thinking about, I don't know. And in relation to this topic, it is very important. We'll start with the nature versus nurture problem. One's nature is, we all have the same nature. We are all fallen beings, and we are capable of all sorts of misadventures. Our nurture is a separate thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it doesn't necessarily mean that people from the working class, the middle class, or the upper class have been nurtured well, because many of them suffer from the same problem. And the crimes, horrendous crimes that you see in society, come from all those classes.
Yeah.
And the news at the moment absolutely tells the whole story of that. Asserting.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah.
So as far as I'm concerned, AI, when it comes down to prophesizing whether any of our children are going to be unfortunate criminals, it'll be a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Mm.
Because of what it will do, it'll turn to the whole idea that the rich and middle class are fine. Unfortunately, the deprived will be denigrated again, because they will obviously have a bad upbringing, born on the council estate as I was, and have made the wrong choices in life because they've been brought up badly. Wrong. I was born in a working class environment on a council estate. Unfortunately, I did have good nurturing, and I have not decided to do anything else other than abide by the law. However, I've been lucky, because what makes one a criminal, in my opinion, is events. It's just like politics. It's events, dear boy, events. You have no idea what is going to force you into any path that you take unless you come up against the problem that causes you to do something which you regret. Now,
Completely agree.
That is something that AI cannot predict. It can't. That algorithm will never predict the events that will ever happen to those poor children, rich, poor, or anyone else. This is becoming Orwellian.
It really is. And the whole idea that the people are going to say, well, yeah, but, you know, if these people turn to drugs, there are so many rich kids that are hooked on drugs that end up, you know, these white middle-class kids, upper-class kids, private school kids, ending up on drugs and ending up on the street. It is just so sinister to me that we're going to start labelling people. And like I keep saying, Sheldon, what are they feeding the machine? What is somebody telling the machine is a predictor of criminality?
Well, it's obviously a bias.
Obviously. It's a trope.
One of my work, it's terrifying to think that those who might have had a parent who've been in prison, or might have had a parent who've committed a crime, or might have a parent who's been ill, or a parent who's suffering from addiction, is going to pass this on to that poor child, and the child will be stigmatized for the rest of their life.
Yeah.
Because what I can't understand is, if there are going to be hundreds and hundreds of thousands of these children who are going to be vulnerable according to this algorithm, how are they going to be? Who's going to look after them then? How are they all going to be given some form of counselling or some form of help? We can't even deal with people who have got ordinary mental health conditions in the NHS, leave alone that.
Yeah, I completely agree, and you know, they're saying that, you know, that the system will alert the school. So right, little Johnny, right, is 6 years old. That's what I'm going to say. A difficult childhood, you know. Maybe he comes in and his clothes aren't clean. You know, maybe he, you know, all of those things, and the system contacts the school and says, little Johnny, we reckon he's a criminal of the future.
Absolutely.
they alert the school, health staff, and then the police. So
Indeed.
So the police then get a message saying there's a 6-year-old at the primary school down the road who we reckon is going to be a criminal in the future, according to our algorithm. Then what? What are they going to do? Haul him in?
Well, how can they can't follow that up? It's impossible.
It's impossible.
And the other thing which concerns me is, if we have one of the powerful, rich siblings or children in a school, or who's being particularly naughty or disruptive, or they see some sort of behaviour which they think is going to fulfil itself in criminality, I don't think that people like, I'm going to mention names, I don't care. I don't think if it was Andrew or anybody else of the rich people in this world's children would ever be reported for anything.
No, I completely agree, and that is my real concern here. Is, you know, and I've spoken to a criminologist this evening, and yesterday evening, and I've spoken to criminologists before. Many times, because I'm particularly interested in when society breaks down, people turning to criminality. It really interests me. In fact, I was thinking about writing a book about it, so I did a lot of interviews on that. And there were a lot of people, a lot of these criminologists who are saying that it is circumstances, like you said, Sheldon, it's events. Because, you know, if there's no police to society, so we keep an eye on each other in society, right? We check each other. So once society stops looking and society is looking the other way, there are more people who would become criminals than you think. You know, it's practically all of us.
Well, the truth of the matter is, in my opinion, I know it's a well-worn phrase. Civilization is a very thin veneer.
It really is.
A very thin veneer. We all think that we live in some sort of respectable, ideological world where nobody falls into horrible circumstances. It takes a very small amount of circumstances to cause a war.
Absolutely. I mean, you imagine, right? We've seen it before with riots across the world and things like that. If there was a blackout, right? If we start getting, you know, blackouts, if there was a blackout across the city of London, and the police couldn't use their rate or whatever was going on, it wouldn't take more than minutes for people to be smashing. We see it all the time, smashing windows and stealing stuff. Perfectly law-abiding people that have become mad. Yeah.
The opportunity would turn that into an event where they were looting.
Yeah. Exactly that. So I don't, you know, we're all probably feeling a bit, oh, well, you know, there are some rough children that could become criminals, but we could easily just become criminals ourselves. I mean, you know, every single dystopian film I've seen, it takes about a day before society breaks down and we're all in boots nicking paracetamol. You know, I mean,
that's it. Yeah, I actually believe, to be honest with you, that I thought we were heading towards 1984. I think we're virtually in it.
So do I. I mean, stuff like this doesn't help, right? And this was in the report, but it just hasn't. It wasn't at the top of the report.
And the most sinister thing, it's been hidden.
The most sinister thing, and nobody's talking about it.
No, nobody wants to know about it. No.
That to me is really scary.
That's the worry, because it's not a topic for discussion yet. Until tonight.
Yeah, I mean these machines. This information was released last week.
Yeah.
And it was just by chance. It was by chance, literally, that I found it.
But you've noticed something. The Heritage Press hasn't said a thing about it.
So it's really interesting. It's really there's sometimes those things just it's what people aren't saying. I've said this before, that is more interesting than what people are saying. But this is a tiny little bit of the report. But for me, it's the most sinister of everything that's there.
Yeah, very difficult.
I mean, honestly.
Will you say a quick word to Faye before you go? Just say hello to her.
Hello, Faye, my love. How's she feeling?
Thank you. Can you hear her?
Yes, I can. Send her my love. Give her a big hug from me, Sheldon.
Okay, sweetheart.
All right, Faye, lots of love. Mwah. Sheldon, thank you very much indeed for that. I honestly, I'm with Sheldon on that. The whole thin veneer on civilization, we'd all break very, very, very quickly, I think. Anyway, let me know what you think about this. Do you think this is sinister? Do you think this is a really good plan, that if we can predict criminals in the future? And what do you think are the predictors of criminality? Do you think it is as easy as saying it's poverty, it's a bad life, it's bad parents, it's single mothers, it's skin colour? I mean, isn't that just, I don't know. Give me a call, 0344 499 1000.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. This is Talk, and it is Petrie with you. We're talking about whether there is a common thread, a predictor of who will become a criminal. Because the Ministry of Justice believe that there is a way to identify the criminals of the future. The Ministry of Justice will deploy machines to identify children who are at risk of falling into a life of crime. So they're suggesting that there is a predictor, that there are common threads, common predictors of who will become a criminal. And I don't believe that's true. I don't believe that there are common threads. I think you can have a family of 3 kids, 2 of them will turn out to not be criminal, the 3rd one will be a criminal. How do you explain that? You've got... I just think it's bogus. It's all tropes. It's all, poverty. That's what it is. Or drugs. Yeah, drugs do lead to crime, but what leads to drugs? These kids are suggesting that they're going to become drug addicts of the future. And then there's lots of people across all social spectrums, all of them, who become drug addicts. But we don't talk about the rich white ones that become drug addicts, because their parents can possibly scoop them up and pay for them to go to rehab. But they still end up on the streets. So, and they still commit crimes in order to feed their habits. So I'm not sure there is a common thread that we can pull to predict a child will become a criminal. Joanna has said, I remember the 7-Up series in 1964, 14 children, long-term social class experiment. Give me the child until he's 7 and I will give you the man, played out in reality. British farm boy from the Yorkshire Dales became a nuclear fusion professor in Wisconsin. He was destined to take over his father's farm. Bruce from a prestigious boarding school became a missionary. Neil from Liverpool wanted to study at Oxford. He was tormented by bullies. He dropped out of Aberdeen University and ended up homeless, living in a squat. It doesn't always follow as expected, even by a computer. Predictions are not always correct. That's really interesting, actually. Joanna, thank you very much indeed. Joanna from Salisbury there. Is there a predictor, in your view? Can you tell who's going to become a criminal? I mean, I've looked at enough kids and gone, you're a wrong 'un in the playground. And thought, well, they're definitely going to be, they're going to definitely. But, there's a different thing, me being judgmental and actually getting the police involved, right? But these machines will alert the schools. These machines will develop a system that can alert schools. So the schools will be told that little Johnny is potentially a criminal, and therefore police will get involved, other people will get involved to try and prevent that. How? I'm sorry, but is it just me? That is so sinister. A computer will tell the school that they've identified a kid in their school who... Oh, don't even. Grace is in London. Hello, Grace. How are you?
I'm very blessed, thank you. How are you?
Good. I'm very well indeed, thank you. Now, what do you think of this?
Oh, so many things. I mean, one of the things that's coming to my mind, just and apologies in advance, but from a theological perspective, is that I kind of like you said that you think anyone could do criminal things in certain circumstances. And I do think that all of us as human beings, we're all fundamentally flawed in various ways, and we're all offered forgiveness, which I find really hopeful. And we also need to have empathy for people who do face particular circumstances at the same time as believing that people are responsible for their actions, and balancing that can be quite difficult. I think that because, as you said, people could end up doing things if they were in those particular situations and circumstances, because to some extent that is the case, we can't say that there's necessarily no potential for predictive factors or correlation. We do know that, as you indicated by saying that people in certain circumstances might, any of us in those circumstances might be led into something. We can see that some people might be more likely to end up doing certain things than other people, but that's not because they're inherently different. It's because of the complicated factors of their lives. And so if the government can actually give more support to some families in a way that's genuinely helpful, then maybe that would be a good thing. But it's hard to know from what we've heard about this plan exactly what it would entail. And it's also obviously fundamentally important that human beings are so endlessly complicated, so they might be slightly more predisposed to shoplift if they are in a particular situation, but that doesn't by any means mean that they necessarily will shoplift, or that people in a better situation won't shoplift, because we're all so much more complicated than our situation. So as is the case with other things in science, for instance, you can have something that slightly increases the likelihood of something, but a bunch of other factors are also really relevant. So to oversimplify things could be really problematic. One of the things that I really feel is going on with our politics at the moment is that some people are trying to say, well, those people from over there, they do this particular crime, and it's as though people making those comments don't recognise that human beings of all backgrounds and groups can do certain crimes, and it's an oversimplification to imagine that one group of people does one kind of thing and another group of people does another thing, when we're all so much more complex than that.
Yeah, and also, I mean, as you know, I don't hold a religion, but you know, I thought the whole human beings can change, right? They can rise above their situation. They can also fall below their situation, and that's what I mean about predictability. And correlation does not equal causation, right? So you can pull together a load of things. So I think it's poor people. Well, there's plenty of really, millions of really decent, hard-working poor people who wouldn't commit a crime ever. So poverty isn't therefore the predictor. So single mother, right, let's have a look at single mother. Well, there was plenty of women who bring up their children as single mothers whose children don't go on to be criminals. So that's not a predictor. Are we saying that skin colour is a predictor of criminality? I certainly hope not. But if we are, well, there are plenty of black and brown people who would never commit a crime either. So that's what I'm saying, is that correlation does not equal causation. So just because you can say, well, if a drug addict commits crimes, yes, but what causes the drug addict? So are you saying that 6-year-old is likely to become a drug addict and then cause crime? Well, how do you know? And what are your predictors? What are you putting into the machine to get that machine to tell you the little Johnny's going to be a criminal?
I mean, I think to some extent there can be... one of the things that's been frustrating for me in recent years is that on a number of occasions we've heard that horrible murder has happened and the perpetrator is autistic. And so I, as an autistic person, I'm thinking, how does this kind of news impact the way that society thinks about those of us on the autistic spectrum?
Absolutely. What if that was put into the machine? Neurodivergence can lead you to become a criminal.
But then at the same time, I'm wondering what exactly this would entail, because I saw a bit of a panorama program the other night where a couple of mothers were talking about their boys who were roughly 14 who'd been stabbed to death and who had both been very much involved in gangs. And these mothers had been saying to the police for ages, we need support. We know that our sons are really in gangs. Please help us get them out of these gangs. We can't get through to them, and they were so upset that they'd not been given support. So I'm thinking, is the plan to find these children who are slightly more at risk of being led into gangs?
You don't need AI for that. You don't need AI for that. These mothers already know. These families already know. The social services probably already know. What are we doing here? This is what I find perplexing about this. This is inventing a cure for a problem that everybody already knows is out there and that there's already a cure for, right? So this seems to me to be absolute waste of time and money, because society already knows where these children are. We already know there's a problem with county lines gangs. We already know there's a problem. I've got a friend of mine who's a very well-to-do woman, middle class, Pilates teacher. Her son got involved in a county lines gang. She went to the police numerous times, and he did end up as well being stabbed. He survived, but he did end up being stabbed. So the police know where these children already are. We don't need a machine contacting the school, and we're already letting them down.
Yeah,
and she would not have been flagged, not be, a posh Pilates teacher.
Yeah, and it's hard to know, like I said, what the system would be, given that AI we know can be very flawed. I've been trying to get some pictures out of ChatGPT today for a design thing that I was working on, and it doesn't always do what you tell it to do. Sometimes it makes
it's biased. It's already biased. We know that.
We know that it's biased against people of colour, in part because there's less information available on people of colour, and therefore it's not so good at being accurate. So that could be really concerning. There was a research paper a week or two ago about public attitudes towards immigration, and they had lots and lots of researchers look at a stupendous quantity of data and pick which bits of data they would feature in their reports, and they ultimately found that researchers were somewhat biased in which bits of data they chose to focus on. And so the complexity of working all of this out could make one slightly wary, and it might indeed be better to focus resources on making things available for all families who are really needing support with raising their kids because of the gangs around them or whatever.
Absolutely. And like I said, we already know where they are. We don't need a machine contacting the school. It's just weird to me. It's just this awful dystopian sort of sinister crawl towards the dehumanisation of our species. Extraordinary. Grace, great to talk to you. I think I've got to take a break because I'm behind, aren't I? Yes.
Across the UK, on DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello, good morning. It is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you with Talkback. And that's what I want you to do. I want you to talk back. We're talking about predictors of criminality because the Ministry of Justice will deploy machines to identify children at risk of falling into a life of crime. Children. What is the machine being told to look for? I want answers to that. I want that. I want to know what the machine is being told is a predictor of criminality, because I bet you none of us would be very happy with it. I bet you it would be single mums, poverty, skin colour, religion, all of the things. I bet you. Because what else could it be? What else could it be? And like I said, you can have entire families where nobody turns to crime apart from one person in that family, all brought up the same way. How do you answer that? How do you predict that? What is the machine being told to look for? And by the way, that machine then contacts the school. The machine does. The machine spits out a name and says, this kid is at risk of becoming a criminal in the future. And then authorities get involved, police, healthcare workers, social workers. I just don't, anyway. Ernie says it's impossible to predict who will carry out a criminal act. Not even AI could do that. The reason someone creates a criminal act is completely an individual reaction to their circumstances. And what is a criminal act to some authorities might not be in the minds of certain individuals. If you're brought up in an environment that in your eyes is idyllic, and someone or something disturbs that, you'll make the appropriate action, you'll take the appropriate action that your moral compass dictates, and nothing can predict what anyone is capable of in some horrific circumstances. And that's from Ernie. You can't predict that. You can't predict what any of us would do confronted with a bad situation. So I don't know how you can predict a child, a young child, a primary school child, could be a criminal in the future unless you're being incredibly narrow-minded and biased about it. Let's go to Tonya, who's in Devon. Lovely Devon. How's Devon at the moment? Are you still suffering with the rain?
Oh, it's bloody awful, am I allowed to say bloody on the radio? Yeah, but yeah, it's awful.
I'm sorry.
No, well, I'd say, what predict, I mean, I'd say if they're targeting something, then they're going to want to know who the children are who might be in danger of being critical thinkers, because they're sure as hell going to come up against the establishment. And so I think we have to look at...
Do you know what? You're right, Tonya. I hadn't even thought about this being used for nefarious reasons.
I mean, what predicts a person that, for instance, let's say I was going to use the lockdown. I mean, as in, what predicts someone who would stand up to the lockdown? What predicts an Anne Frank? What predicts these kind of people that will stand up to the current regime? Because we know who makes the laws and who decides what's illegal and what's legal.
And something that was is legal today might not be tomorrow, right?
Exactly. So yeah, this is it. You have to look at whoever is, and you're absolutely right. I'm really glad you said about AI being biased in its model. It's written into the models, okay? So they are. It's not intelligent, and that gentleman that was on earlier is absolutely right. It's not thinking. It's not. It's just predicting the next bit of data after data done, and literally, it's just doing it not by thinking, but by just grabbing a load of bits of information and putting what's the next likely bit to go off.
Yeah, that was Sheldon who said that, and that's really interesting because I've only just noticed that happening when I Google something, and I do it all the time. And I've only just noticed that, I think yesterday or today, and I did think, are you trying to humanise Google now? You're trying to make me believe that it's thinking.
Do you know what really annoys me when they say it reasons is because what annoys me about that is because when human beings reason, we need also, it's not just logic, we also use emotion when we reason. So when people have damaged the area of their brain that regulates emotion, they in certain cases they can't reason because we need emotion to reason as well.
Yeah,
right?
we need emotional intelligence along with knowledge.
And some logic as well. So, but all AI is, it's like it's using pure logic. There's no reasoning there. When you tell you can think, there's no reasoning. This is just lies, and it's marketing. But
yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, sort of off the point. But yeah, what does predict? And I wouldn't be predictable myself. I mean, it depends how you look at it. But I mean, you were talking about drugs. I mean, I was a heroin and crack addict for 20 years.
Weren't you?
I've given up. I've been off now for 19 years, long time.
Wow, Tonya.
But I did. What would have predicted that I would become a drug addict?
Yeah.
So probably not. I mean, my father was very middle class, right? So that probably wouldn't have predicted it necessarily. But obviously there's things wrong in everyone's upbringing, okay, without going into details, a perfect upbringing, who does, the things that were wrong in it.
Yeah, I certainly didn't have the perfect upbringing. In fact, all of my siblings should have been criminals. Yeah.
Exactly, it doesn't mean... But what would have predicted what happened to me is that I hitchhiked off the back of... I hitched off the back of a motorbike, and this was in Australia, okay, and I was just hitching to the beach, right?
Yeah.
Now, up until that time, I had, I'd smoked dope, and I'd taken bits of when you're young, bit of acid, I'd taken all those sort of things, that stuff. But I hadn't ever taken, I hadn't taken heroin, things like that. I never tried it or anything like that, and I had no intentions of. But I hitchhiked on the back of this guy's motorbike, he stopped to give me a lift. And anyway, it turns out he'd just come back from India, and he had he'd obviously bought. I don't think he was an addict himself. He was a photographer. He had his own studio, and he took me back to his studio, and he obviously just wanted to get me in bed. I mean, that's what he was doing. But he passed me a joint, and I assumed it was marijuana. So I took it. I started smoking it. Next thing I knew is the walls were going up and down. And it turned out later, he told me later on, when I'd come round, that it was heroin. I think he slept with me as well. He must have done it because I was on... I mean, heroin kills your sock stripe anyway, so I don't know what I don't think he knew what he was doing, but I don't remember what happened. But I do remember him taking me out. I think it was fireworks, because it was Sydney Harbour. It was all covered in, like, fireworks. I think he took me out to this thing, and there was all these people. He was just handing this heroin round, and he's not even telling people what it was. And then he dumped me the next day. And because his girlfriend came back.
Sounds like a catch.
When I started to come round, I started thinking, that was really nice. I really liked the feeling once I started to come round and stop being sick, and the walls going up and down. And to cut a long story short, I then soon after, I knew a couple that did door-to-door grass selling, and it's what they used to do in Australia. It's full-day smartphone banging doors out. So I knew they were junkies, and I ended up getting some heroin. And in Australia, it was white Chinese heroin. So over here, it's brown. And I ended up, cut a long story short, you can't smoke white heroin. And I was and they said, oh no, you can't. And they ended up shooting me up.
Wow.
And that was the second time. And honestly, it was such an amazing thing. And that's the thing, you never get your first hurt back. It was so out of this world.
Well, that's what it's called chasing. Isn't it called chasing the dragon? Well, because it's never as good as the first hit. So that's what creates the addiction. Is you keep chasing it.
Exactly, you get chased. So I knew, but that's how I sort of ended up taking heroin. I think if I'd been given the choice, if he'd have said to me, "This is heroin. Do you want it?" Look, I don't know, but I'm sure there was always a line in my mind that you didn't cross. That there was okay. It was okay to take a bit of this, a bit of speed of it, but you didn't cross that line. I don't know, I can't say, but I wasn't given that choice, okay? I wasn't given the choice. He just gave it to me, right? So...
but again, like you're saying, that is not... There's no thread of predictability there, right?
Not really, but you could say that I was, and going back to my original thing, I am a critical thinker. So I did come across... I had problems at school. I was in lot. I got kicked out of school, so maybe that would have predicted it. But I don't. I think it's difficult to know because that got in the way. And I just I don't know. But I think definitely if there's anything about you that challenges authority, if you ask too many questions. I was always asking too many questions, and I was always told shut up, stop. I was asking too many questions, and they don't like you asking questions. So, yeah, kids ask questions, big problem. Big problem. You need to shut them up. And
my son was constantly pushing back as well and asking questions. They did not like that at all. But if that is a predictor, then we are in real trouble. Tonya, you're amazing. Thank you. That is such an incredible story. Gary has said, I very much doubt this is about predicting future criminals, but it is instead a way of cutting the costs spent on policing. Either way, it's very worrying, and yet another way the state will infringe on our rights. And that's from Gary in Glasgow. Got to take a break. Back in a sec.
across the UK. On DAB+, on YouTube, on your mobile, and on your side. This is Talk.
Hello there, and a good morning to you. This is Talk, and it is Petrie here with you until the top of the hour. And I just want to read a couple more messages for you. Snakebite. Good morning, Snakebite. It says, I'm biracial, born to a black immigrant mother in the US and raised in Norfolk, Virginia, a town where schools are actually still segregated. Are you kidding me? And where a school success story is simply to graduate on time and not be busted by the cops, and I succeeded. Virginia is one of the leading states, if not the leader, in the whole school to prison pipeline. Most kids over here are out of luck anyway, and it's because of the system repeatedly burning them. No study needed for that. And he goes on to say, I succeeded in one front but kind of failed on the whole career front, but that's another discussion. See, that's interesting, isn't it? That, like you said, it's a no-brainer why those kids are failing if they're in a system that is leading them to fail, that is setting them up for failure. And this one from G says, I'm now 52, living in Manchester with 3 young children. I was raised with 2 sisters in a very well-respected and wealthy family with high political connections. I managed to achieve great things in my own careers eventually, but served time in prison in early 2000 with a terrible drug habit and for fraud. I've committed many crimes throughout my life and continue to do so by some extent. Zero chance AI or any machine would have flagged me up as a young age. I've never committed a crime against an individual, nor would I ever do so. I fear for my own children, especially because of where we live. See, I don't think there is an easy predictor. I really don't. I'm not being woolly about it. I just don't think there is. Lee said, predicting criminals. I think many people will be understandably uneasy about this. It feels like another Labour step towards the very 1984-esque way of life, where the state starts trying to predict behaviour rather than dealing with actions. I think there's a real risk of self-fulfilling prophecy. If you start labelling young people as high risk, you may end up shaping outcomes rather than preventing them. Treat a child as a problem early enough, and you shouldn't be surprised if they disengage or internalise that label. Instead of investing in systems that attempt to forecast who might offend, perhaps government would achieve more by strengthening youth services, youth clubs, mentoring and practical life skills programmes. That is absolutely where I'm from. Those are the kind of interventions that address causes rather than just analysing data, in my view. And that's from Lee in Birmingham. Another very well put together message there, Lee. And that's exactly how I think the money should be spent on, not on predicting it, but in supporting young people. It's not that difficult. It doesn't seem. Anyway, Lenny is in Ashford. Morning, Lenny.
Good morning, Petrie.
How are you?
I'm tickety-boo, thank you.
Good, I'm very pleased to hear that.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a predictor of criminality?
Well, I mean, criminality, I mean, you've said an awful lot, with a few words. And that is that, what actually causes it in the first place. Mm. And all I can say to you, the advice my dad gave me, and it stuck with me throughout my life. And at the time when I could have got involved with it, I remember these advice, and I've been a proper citizen ever since. I've never got involved in it.
What was the advice?
He took me down to the Caledonian Road to Pentonville Prison.
Oh.
And
that is a grim Victorian prison, isn't it?
Yeah. And we stood outside, and he said to me, I want to show you a big hotel with all the clever people in London, this is where they live. They know all the shortcuts, and this is where they live. And he went through and told me what it was like inside. He said how bad it was inside. Now, I'm going back 65 years ago. So